In the formal education of the Buddhist scholars, which follows from the tradition that developed in Nalanda Buddhist University in India. So often, like for example, His Holiness the Dalai Lama always emphasizes that what Tibetan Buddhism has preserved and developed is what he calls the Nalanda tradition. So this tradition emphasizes a lot of learning. And I think, like in my understanding, I think His Holiness the Dalai Lama feels that for Buddhism to be relevant to a world where people's religious identities are not going to be as clear and established as it used to be, how just in this country, look around, right? Church attendance has gone down. People who are spiritual will say we're not religious. The rise of Christian non-denominational churches is also a form of this kind of departure from clear identities. Ironically, we also witness, as a footnote, identities becoming such a big deal with politics and all that. But religious identity is kind of, at least, from we're seeing more and more, and that seems to be less relevant. So anyway, in His Holiness the Dalai Lama's work of reaching across boundaries, it makes sense that he emphasizes learning. Just as Jesuits encourage learning no matter where it takes them, so to say. And there is that tradition in Nalanda that emphasizes learning. But there's another side to this whole learning business, which is dogmatism. You become very dogmatic. And the face of dogmatism is not just I'm not even talking about religious fanaticism, but it's just a very rigid adherence to these are the terms of reference, but they're no longer just terms of reference. They become structured as truths with capital T. So at some point, the cosmology of this cosmic Mount Meru in the middle of everything that exists, from which on the four sides, four continents exist, at some point was taken quite literally, and for some, still taken literally. But of course, even within the scholastic tradition, so His Holiness the Dalai Lama does it really well, where he also is not shy to say and openly say, I don't believe in that cosmology anymore. As in, I think it also means that at one point he did believe, So it's not just symbolic, At some point he did believe, this is how physically the universe is arranged. But then he says, now we have enough proof that, that's not how it is. And so then you depend more on the symbolic meaning of that cosmology. But then there are also times where the terms of reference themselves, rigidly becomes like truth with capital T. So in part, this chapter, what we're witnessing here is somebody who wants to, whether genuinely or not, but somebody who wants Milarepa to abide by these terms of reference. Basically saying, you want to present yourself as a Buddhist teacher, these are the terms of reference that I'm not sure if you even have been educated in that. So they want to debate him, right? In the biography, of course, it's presented that this person is jealous of his success. Maybe, maybe not. I mean, but that's how the story is told. I think we don't even need to play up the jealousy part, even if you can see it as, this person is genuinely, concerned that Milarepa gets his theology right. Let's put it that way, right? In Western terms, like we need to make sure, that he gets his theology right, because otherwise, like, all kinds of mischief can come. So they want to set him straight on that. And so that's why he says, he asks these questions. Is space obstructing or not? Page 406. So then this Geshe, this learned one, this teacher said, no one would ever ask that kind of question. But since, as in, it's such a basic question. And that's because in the scholastic education, there's a whole, in fact, like right now in the monastery, when you do attend like seminary, which, by the way, not all monks and nuns go to seminary by any means, but more and more in this modern period, majority of them, the ideal is that they go to seminary and have scholastic learning. Historically, that tends to be a small percentage of the monastic population. Majority of the monastic population spend their time on, I would say, serving the community through performance of ritual. So, but we need to understand ritual along the lines of ritual as therapy. Mental emotional therapy, social therapy. So the performance of large-scale rituals whereby social ills, social ruptures are amended, reaffirmed, and everybody, knows their place, that sort of thing. And so a small population of these monks and nuns, the ones who have shown an aptitude, they are then sent to the monastic universities, seminaries, the equivalent of our seminaries and divinity schools. So even now, the first topic that you would study when you begin your training to become a Geshe or to become a Khenpo is this called definitions. So these definitions are compendium, almost like catechism, but it's not so much about articles of belief, but rather you need to get your standard definition of terms correct. Of course, correct is you can also read the word correct as here are the rules of engagement. Here are the terms of engagement. Meaning, if I say space, but what I think of space and what you think of space is different, then how are we going to communicate? And then for sure, there's no way to debate, because it's not a debate. It's just yelling at each other. Debate is something principled. So if we're going to debate something, which for the Gelugpa system, that's their primary mode of learning is through debate, dialectical debates, then definition of terms are really important. So you'll spend like maybe even the first year going through a collection of terms. So part of it would be to define say, the four elements. We talk a lot about how all physical objects consist of a combination of these four great elements, these elemental properties, right? So the property of solidity, the property of fluidity, the property of heat, and the property of movement. So the great element of earth, water, fire, and wind. So these are poetic names for these properties, right? So there they also learn, okay, then space is not technically, sometimes it says it is, but often it says it's not technically an element. Space is just what makes the other four elements possible. So part of that will be learning, okay, what is definition of space? So the definition of space, or one of the main definitions of space is it is not obstructing. It doesn't obstruct. Space doesn't obstruct. So Milarepa starts, by asking this. And of course, Milarepa knows enough of the rules of engagement, the terms of engagement of this. So that's why this teacher said, yeah, that's kind of a silly question to ask. It's so rudimentary. Yeah, so he says, is space obstructing or not? Then of course the answer is, no. By definition, right? We say space is unobstructing. Now the earth, the great element of earth, which is the property of solidity, that its characteristic is that it obstructs. But so here Milarepa says, I say space is obstructing. So then, again, in the debate tradition, where is your proof statement that backs that up? Now, Milarepa switches the terms of engagement. Basically, he switches to Jedi mind tricks. And so here it says, he rested evenly in the meditative equipoise called space that is hard and obstructing like a vajra. So Milarepa used Jedi mind tricks and froze that guy. Logically, he's occupying space, right? So space should not obstruct him from moving his hand, but like So this teacher said, this is Jedi mind tricks. He says, you have had Tirtaka masters, meaning you have like teachers who teach magic, the outsiders. And so you use that, to bind me. But he says, everyone who has a mouth will say that space is unobstructing. I agree, like with this teacher. And then Milarepa said, is it so that everyone accepts space as unobstructing without having analyzed space? Do animals also say that space is unobstructing? You and your masters who are proponents of that view that space is unobstructing have been proven false. This may be due to black mantra, but I have sufficiently shown you that space is obstructing. Now, the thesis that I will propose is that the rock of this cave is unobstructing. And now the guy knows. He's like, yeah, and it's only true if you start using your magic again. In a way, like Milarepa is not playing by the rules. And this guy also understands the workings of magic, Jedi mind tricks. He says, yeah, you're just... But Milarepa's bigger point is, there is a bigger Jedi mind trick, which is our own confusion. So in a way, you could say that it is not as if Milarepa was expecting this logician to accept his magical tricks. It is not like Milarepa did not know that this guy would recognize that he is, like Milarepa is using a magical trick. It's that Milarepa is pointing to, like, why are you even studying these definitions? Yeah, is it to prop up a system of belief? Whereby, as long as you defer to those beliefs, the system works. And if you don't defer to those beliefs, the system doesn't work. So he's saying, is that the extent of your Dharma practice, which is to operate only within that circular, system of references? So Milarepa is knowingly and deliberately showing, you think that my black magic is unreasonable, but I want you to see how what you are engaged in is also a form of black magic. As in, it's a self-referential circular loop. Then Milarepa is, but I have something that cuts through all of this. Yeah, I have something that cuts through all of this. And so that's when he goes into his song, right? The genuine Dharma that is not about setting up a system of belief and then defending it and challenging it and this and that, but to really transform yourself through these teachings. And so when they finally got it, like, oh, yeah. And then they say, teach us, then how to practice the Bodhisattva path, the 6 paramitas. So 408, tell us how to practice the 6 paramitas. So then Milarepa starts his songs. The victorious great refuges are the 3 precious jewels. Great bliss resides at the crown of my head. Be inseparable from me. From my heart I pray. Praying to the Guru, the principle of the Guru, that he always experienced as residing at the crown of my head. Take with the hook of undistracted compassion the 6 beings who have all been your father and mother with a mind of love. Always keep them. And so it's like he's saying, this is the fundamental point of Bodhisattva practice. With the hook of undistracted compassion, bring them, hook as in that which pulls them in. So pull them in with compassion and hold them with love. The yogi of the Mahayana the great vehicle. So again, I always try to remind everyone we're not talking about sectarian labels. We're talking about a particular approach, a particular motivation to why am I practicing these things. The yogi, the practitioner of the great vehicle, does not hear the Dharma that's free of words. He does not ponder the true meaning of emptiness, nor does he meditate on the unborn reality. He turns away from the 10. He turns away from the 10 non-virtues. So here, this section here is a little unclear. The translators want to say that this Mahayana is referring to those who miss the point. Yeah? Because the first 3 lines basically does not hear the Dharma that's free of words, does not ponder the true meaning of emptiness, does not meditate on the unborn reality. Yeah? He's saying that and he turns away from the 10 non-virtues. So it's a little bit unclear here, you know. It seems like he's critiquing. He's critiquing a particular way of practicing where it's bound up in rules, but don't see the underlying reality, which is those 3 lines: Dharma that is free of words, true meaning of emptiness, unborn reality. Yeah, so this section is you could read it as a critique. Then, kind of rhetorically, a bunch of questions now. What benefit is generosity with hope for repayment? So he's saying, you know, okay, if you approach, right, these teachings, Buddha's prescriptions, as like a moralistic code that you're trying to be good, then he's saying, what benefit is generosity with hope for repayment? You know, what kind of generosity is that, you know, if it is motivated by, oh, I'm going to be met with this reward and that reward, I will be praised, or even I have good karma. Where you don't loosen the knot of errors. So like, it's possible, you know, like you think you are practicing giving and generosity, when your generosity is based on this hope of repayment, where you're still greedy, basically. What benefit is there from pretentious discipline? So these are the 6 perfections, but pointing out how we can superficially look like we're practicing the 6 perfections, but we're getting trapped. What benefit is there from pretentious discipline, where you're not free of deceit and hypocrisy? So when it comes to disciplined conduct, you know, sometimes people make a big show of their disciplined conduct, but it's deceit and hypocrisy. Only in front of other people, oh, look very good. Then behind closed doors, you know. And there's quite a bit of that. You live a certain persona in the public view. And then your inner circle knows all the skeletons. What benefit is the patience of ambition for fame, where you can't bear the weapon of others' harsh words? So the perfection of patience often is just pretending to be patient, or even being patient because you know that you will be famous for being a great practitioner. If you just put up with, oh, I'm not affected. Because people will see, how advanced I am. But, when others' harsh words come in our direction, we cannot bear that. We lash out. These days it means, we get our attorney to go, sue them for libel. What benefit is there in the striving for virtue? Yeah, so this is diligence. That isn't free from laziness and sloth. So on the one hand, it looks like we are diligently striving after virtue, but there's an underlying laziness and sloth, meaning like you're not inspired, You're just going through the motions. What benefit is there in forced meditation, just like controlling the mind, that is not free of the distraction of mind? That you might engage in very coercive control of the mind, but where the mind is not habituated to simply being tired of and uninterested in distraction. That's really how it should be. Like you should cultivate the different mental qualities so that distraction is no longer something that you try to rein yourself in from, but distraction is no longer attractive or appealing. So they often use the, it's like tigers being offered, very fresh and tasty grass. It's like, yeah, whatever, like no interest. What benefit is there in cultivating wisdom, prajna, where appearances don't arise as one's friends? Meaning like, you might think you have some degree of wisdom, especially the wisdom of emptiness, but still you cannot perceive appearances as friends. Meaning you make an enemy out of sight, sound, smell, taste, touch, thoughts. Appearances include these 6 objects of the 6 senses: sight, sound, smell, taste, touch, thoughts. So this is pointing to how if your wisdom is still kind of limited or forced, right? If your wisdom is just a matter of I am operating within these terms of reference, I can spout out all the definitions. I know, the difference between this and that and that and that and that and that, right? But the real test is that how do you relate to the objects of the senses? If you see the objects of senses as still enemies, or frenemies, sometimes they are friends, sometimes they are enemies, then, he says, that's not really wisdom. Wisdom is when all appearances that arise, you see them as friends. Meaning you don't have a problem with them. Then what benefit is there from extensive hearing, meaning learning? Hearing means learning because oral culture, yeah. So what's the point of extensive learning without understanding the profound permissions and prohibitions, or prescriptions and proscription? What benefit is there in speaking of cause and effect when one's practice isn't harmonious with what to adopt and reject? And you might be able to talk very fancy of, about karma, teachings about karma, how many things have to come together before a certain action is fully this karma or that karma. He says, but if your actions is not in harmony with what the Buddha taught us to adopt and to reject, then it's useless. What benefit is there in assuming a monk's appearance when one's own mind stream isn't in accord with Dharma? You have the appearance of a monk or nun or a spiritual practitioner, but your mind is not in accord with the Dharma. You have a mistaken view if you want to have wisdom without killing the poisonous snake of the afflictions. You have a mistaken view if you want bodhicitta without taming the storm of jealousy. You have a mistaken view if you want honor and respect without abandoning the harm of beings. You have a mistaken view if you want equality, but don't abandon the bias of clinging to an I. Without taming the demon of clinging to a self, the hammer of the afflictions will beat the yogi. Without transforming your actions into the accumulations, you will be a hindrance for others' virtue. Without Dharma having mixed with your own mind stream, meaningless words will upset others' minds. Meaning, you talk and talk and talk a lot, All it will do is to upset other people's minds. And there, I think, it's pointing to how, even if you, superficially is very educated and, seems to be good in expressing the Dharma and teaching the Dharma, if there isn't something more than that, if your conduct doesn't touch people's hearts in some ways, then all the fancy things that you can say about Dharma, it's just hollow. And people recognize that, it's just annoying, to people. Not meditating in this life is meaningless. Be without regret at the time of death. Not meditating here, and I think better if we say not cultivating. Like not cultivating these skillful states. Like increasingly, I think the word meditating is too passive, Meditate on this. Close your eyes. Sit a certain way. I'm meditating. But to cultivate, like a farmer, like a gardener would cultivate, a field, a garden. It takes attention, it takes care, it takes weeding out weeds, it takes adding fertilizer at the right time. Too much fertilizer too early will burn. Too hot, too wet, too much sun, too little sun. So to cultivate, it's an active. And it's the Tibetan word gompa, or the Sanskrit bhavana, to cultivate. So if we don't cultivate ourselves, then this life is meaningless. And if you live your whole life in a meaningless way, then when death comes, it will be great regret. And if you don't want regret, when death comes, then start cultivating. So this first one is like the 6 paramitas. The next song there's another list where there are 10 paramitas. And that's directly related to the 10 levels of bodhisattvas. First bhumi, second bhumi, third bhumi. So that's why there's 10 paramitas. So on top of the usual 6, it's skillful means, power, aspiration, and wisdom. The other 4. Sometimes this wisdom here in the list of the 10 perfections is sometimes translated as knowledge, but it's not knowledge like information, you know. It's like knowing, knowledge in that sense, knowing, a primordial knowing. In this list on 410, you know, even if we just look at the 6 perfections, you know, Milarepa gives a very pithy, and so this is like the specialty of like he knows, you know, what to give, so he doesn't need, you know, to tell students, okay, sign up for the seminary. Then after 3 years, you know what to do. He knows, you know, what to give, just exactly what they need. So using very simple words, you know, not a lot of technical definitions. He says, on the other side, self-clinging has been relinquished. Generosity is nothing than that. The gist of generosity is self-clinging is no longer there. And then what is the gist of discipline? Deceit has been relinquished. You don't have to pretend anymore. On the other side, there is no fear of reality. So patience. Patience here, our English word patience, doesn't convey exactly the what is this perfection of patience. Kashanti. It's like forbearance. It's able to bear, forbear, right? Forbearance. So he says here, you know, but how is that perfected? That is perfected when you no longer have fear of what is. So the opposite of the perfection of patience is an inability to accept what is. And then we get annoyed. So Kashanti is the opposite of aggression, anger. And Kashanti is this perfection of patience. And Kashanti is related to Shanti, peace, abiding peacefully. So means, you know, patience is talking about nothing disturbs you, you know. Anything and everything that happens, you're like, well, you know, causes, conditions have brought them here. And you're not shaken by it. On the other side, patience is practice is constant. And so diligence is nothing other than that. Meaning when you are constantly cultivating yourself, then that's diligence. On the other side, you abide naturally. And that is meditative concentration. Yes, there's lots of techniques, you know, do this, do that, do this, do that. But finally, when your mind is settled into its own place, when your mind has come home and your body has come home, that's meditative concentration. On the other side, you realize the abiding nature. So this is another word for Buddha nature, another word for, the diamond within, all of that. When you realize this, the nature of things, then this pranya, which we commonly translate as primordial wisdom or wisdom, is nothing other than that. So this is the short definition of the six perfections. Tilopa has something like that too. Is talk about the six words summarizing the six perfections. And I think it's Tilopa maybe. Milarepa elsewhere also have a summary again of that is like this, in a very pithy way. But I feel personally, just this very pithy thing is good. It's fresh, but we should also learn, like jewel ornament of liberation. The definitions, because it helps us sharpen, so it's not like fuzzy. But when we do that, again, don't mistake, right, the menu for the meal. When we get all the definitions right and everything, but then we have spent so much time, researching the menu, and you've not eaten, then not useful. I find that, like, using the analogy of eating, when you eat something new, I find that when you know more about, that's of course for people who have interests like that, like myself. If you know more about, how it is prepared, how it is cooked, what are the basic ingredients, so then, so that's like the menu, so to say, a description of what it is, and then when you're eating, right, you can detect all those things, then your experience and enjoyment of that food, is more robust. So in the same way, this more pithy instruction of Milarepa is the main eating. But this main eating can be enhanced by knowing more, what 23 different spices were put together, for this particular taste. Yeah. Then you can think in terms of like this more pithy thing, right? The actual eating is for my benefit. Knowing all the definitions is for the benefit of others. Because the more we know of all the more detailed, then when we need to, we know what is most helpful to the other person to give. Which is what Milarepa is able to do. Teachers less than Milarepa's kind of ability can only repeat party line. And cannot touch the heart, Yeah, but the other guy, still want to talk up Pramana, which is on page 411. That's basically he wants to debate, the rules of debate. He wants to talk about logic. He wants to talk about reasoning. He said to Milarepa, you're just, substituting words with words. You're also just playing with words, We should get serious about debate, Questions, comments?
It seems like in this text, it was talking about these guys as if their main motivation was just that he was getting these offerings that they should have gotten at the
Yeah,
monastery.
jealousy. Hmm. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, yeah. But for me, it's like even putting aside that jealousy, I don't know. I think it's a literary device, you know.
Yeah.
It makes for a better story, you know. Oh, these jealous, you know. Even in these stories, I feel like, you know, sometimes it's just for dramatic effect to say that they're jealous, you know. And for me, it's like, so then what? It doesn't do much for me. For me, I like to take them seriously and say, well, they are concerned about these definitions. I find that if we just stay like, oh yeah, out of jealousy, you know, right? It's so easy for me to impute, you know, when someone wants to debate me, like, they're just jealous. But try to like, but what if they're really concerned, you know? Then if they're, even if they're really concerned, Milarepa is, you know, showing what is even more important.
And that seems to be pointing out what is real
Yes.
as being more important than the concepts about
Yes.
it.
Yes. Right.
And that seems to be the overlying theme of this
Right. Right.
teaching.
Right. Right. I mean, in terms of a narrative, you know, I can see how it's more exciting, you know, if these debaters are, you know, as a literary device, you know.
But it's really, they're just misunderstanding the truth.
Yes, yeah, they're stuck in that system. It's sort of also like in a way like life of Jesus, you know, the Pharisees and the Sadducees, and you know they're presented as you know, and to me not very powerful, you know, if we just say oh they're all just hypocrites, you know. But what if they are very much wedded to that and concerned about that? I feel that even if we give them that, the take home lesson remains. Right? And that's more important for us to see, I feel.
It's such a mysterious thing to live without concepts.
Yeah. I don't think he's saying throw away concepts, you know.
Right.
Yeah. He's saying yeah, he's saying don't mistake the menu for the meal. Eat. Eat first. Then you can analyze what you ate. You know, he's like, you guys have forgotten to eat. Yeah, you have researched so much about food and the properties of food. And everything is laid waste. You don't eat. Instead, you have food fights. You say, eat. Then we can talk.
A question. I'm unfamiliar with this term pramana.
Yeah, it's logic, reasoning. It's a particular field of study.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. It's the study of logic and reasoning. Yeah, Tema, Glossary of Terms 758. Valid cognition or validity, a term generally associated with the body of Buddhist teachings that address epistemology and logic. But it can also refer to the valid teacher, the Buddha. So the Buddha's pramana, as in he is the valid one. He's the ultimate logic or reasoning. But his logic and reasoning is not based on concepts. His logic and reasoning is, he is, in a way you could say, he is a witness to truth. So he's the ultimately valid one. So even the study of pramana is to reach that state, you see. But people get lost in, again, studying food more than eating food.
And he really takes that metaphor in the next paragraphs about.
Oh, yes.
I mean, it's really funny.
Yes. The indigestion and the,
Yes, farting.
the farting and the, yes, urinate and defecate and yeah. I remember a high school teacher who would say, things like, we suffer from a constipation of thought and a diarrhea of words.
It's so true.
Yeah, so then in that field of studies, like they have all these definitions, like, concepts that are generalities, concepts that are based on direct valid cognition and indirect valid cognition. 3 types of reasons: contradictory, connective, and indefinite. Yeah. So all these, Yeah. What is inference? Is inference a valid cognition or invalid cognition? Inference is classified as valid cognition. So inference, the example I always use is, if you see smoke, you know there's fire. Because there can be no smoke without fire. Of course, then if you are dealing with Milarepa, he would go, ooh, smoke. Where's fire? Where's fire?
Because is it what he's saying is that what you perceive is really what's true?
Yeah, or also untrue, right? Yeah, that is your perception, right? So you can play this, you can let this play out, like imagine you say, like, oh, well, valid inference is valid cognition, because if you see fire, if you see smoke, you know that there's fire, So if we want to create a scenario of Milarepa based on the preceding, he'll be like, oh, really? Here. He'll like, "Meh, smoke, 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 He'll say, where's the fire? Where's the fire? No fire. Right? So by the rules of engagement, of pramana, or just like common, you're like, no fair. You're doing Jedi mind tricks. And he's like, yes, but you know what? I'm doing that so that you see that fundamentally we are stuck in this bigger Jedi mind trick that we need to get out of. the basic confusion that gives rise to attachment and aversion. So another way of putting it is to say, for Milarepa, he's more interested in showing how all parts of relative truth, even if you could say this is better, this is worse, right? He says, nonetheless, they are relative truths. You have to see their relative status. And these other guys, if you don't, put aside, like they are motivated by jealousy or whatever, take them seriously, give them that much. You could say what they are saying is, yes, all relative truths are relative, but in the realm of relative truths, there are helpful relative truths and harmful relative truths. That would be their defense. Yeah. I try to see it from their side. They're like, we want to make sure. Like as long as we're in the realm of relative truths, not all relative truths are equal. That's part of what they are saying. Putting aside, what are the motivations they have in challenging Milarepa. And I can see both of those points, But of course, in this story, right, Milarepa is the hero. So it's also saying, oh, no, but he knows their intentions. He knows, what's truly motivating them in this debate. But in a way, it doesn't matter. Because he's going to skillfully navigate for them, help them navigate through their own obstacles and come out the other side. So in a way, you could say all these people who come and talk to him, challenge him, debate him, in fact, they have great, good karma. Because Milarepa got them to the other side. Yeah. Yeah, good. I might have to run now.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, sure. I think next Sunday I can't. Yeah, I have to assist in an online retreat that Kenjin Konjo Gyosen is doing with Tibet House in Mexico. The following Sunday, possible, I think. Yeah.
Can I ask you about some stuff behind you on your shrine there?
Oh yeah, what are you seeing? Or
I'm interested if those are alebrije armadillos from Mexico.
oh yeah, people have started giving me armadillos from Mexico. Yeah, I think they are making a connection between armadillos and mongoose, which is Jambala's what the Lord of Abundance holds in his hand. Yeah.
I've been curious because I have some alebrije here of peacocks.
Ah, okay, yeah, and also, like, there's a whole thing I only also learned recently, like, based on when you're born and this and that, you have like your spirit animals.
Oh,
So mine is armadillo. Yeah.
Okay.
Yes. So
And
that's
in what in Mexican tradition?
yeah, Mexican. And then even this, like in a particular area in Mexico, they make these.
It's wherever they have copal wood.
Yeah, and so it's yeah.
It's beautiful.
On that same note, I was wondering where those cute paper animals, those came from. They're not there anymore, but you had this like row of paper animals. Do you remember?
Oh yeah, this was just yesterday
Yeah.
because those are the party hats. Yesterday, the two god kids celebrated joint birthday. They have birthday this month. So
Oh,
7 and 8, and so let me show you the party hats in action. Let's see. Party hats in action. Oh yeah, here.
Oh yeah. Yeah,
Ah, cool.
That's
Aw.
one family. Then uh,
that's Joseph, right?
yeah, and that's another family. And then let's see. Yeah, everyone wearing their party hats.
they're awesome.
Yeah, so that's what they are. So the night before, they were making party hats for, everyone, like choosing which animal for which person.
Nice.
Yes, there's like hedgehog, turkey, boy fox, girl fox, boy bunny, girl bunny, and owl, and yeah. So yeah, that's what they were. They were all sitting here waiting for the party to start yesterday.
Oh, I see. Okay.
So okay,
Okay.
see you all and have a good fourth. And those of you who are with the Shantideva, see you all on Tuesday.
See you then.
Yeah, bye.
Bye. Thank you.